What's up Evercade fans, Games Apprentice back with another Evercade video, and this week I'm going to be telling you about my top 20 games. Not carts, games. Now, over the past few years of reviewing Evercade carts, I've played hundreds of games. Some have been dismal, some have been forgettable, but there's been more than enough on there to get a top 20 list, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. In fact, the only reason I started reviewing Evercade games in the first place is because I wanted to make a top 20 list, and I thought, oh, there's not that many out there, I'll be able to do that pretty easily. And then they carried on making more and more carts, which is great for you, annoying for me, but great. Now, if you're already a subscriber, you should have an idea of what's going to be on this list. And if you're not, well, there's never been a better time to subscribe, as I've got tons of Evercade videos on here and there's plenty more coming. So click that subscribe button and help support my channel. Now, I generally get all my Evercade games from Funstock, and you should too. No, they're not my sponsor, but maybe they'll watch this video and we can work something out. Before we get started with the top 20, there's just one elephant in the room that I wanted to mention, because I can't do a top 20 list without at least talking about this game. Now, I couldn't do a top 20 Evercade games list without talking about Cathedral. Cathedral is the best game I've played on the Evercade. It ticked all the boxes, it's a solid Metroidvania with a bit of a learning curve, and it completely hooked me. Sadly, if you saw my review, you'll know I ended up not scoring the cart, because it corrupted my save, and not being an emulation it was native to the Evercade, it offered no save state to back it up. This was absolutely gutting, and for those reasons, I recommend playing it, just not on the Evercade. I'll never get over it. I'm excluding built-in games from this list because otherwise it'd probably just be a big list of Capcom games. If you want to know which Capcom games are good, I do a video for that, but know that most of them are good. Now, I haven't personally played every single Evercade cart out there. I hope to by the time I first do this video, but as I said, more and more are coming. There are a few carts that I've played but not released a review for yet. The games on there will be eligible for this list. So if it's not on one of these carts, hopefully a graphical appeal there, and I don't already have a video on it, then it's probably not a game I've played, so it's not eligible for this list, even if it is something I've played not on the Evercade. With that out of the way, grab the popcorn and settle in. Here is my top 20 games. Starting off the list at number 20 from the Atari Arcade Collection 1 is Asteroids Deluxe. This is one of my all-time favourite arcade games, even though I don't think I actually played it in an arcade until about 10 years ago. There's a couple of versions of it on the Evercade, but this one is easily the best one on here. It's such a good pick-up and play game that really encapsulates what the Evercade is all about. Now, I was probably a little harsh on my IRM Arcade 1 review when talking about In the Hunt. I ranked it number 1, but I didn't give it a Gem of the Week award. Looking back, it feels like one of the more memorable games on the system. I don't think anything I said about it was inaccurate. It does mainly carry itself with the design, while the gameplay is just unfairly hard at times. But if you're not bothered about being challenged and just play an arcade game with unlimited continues, there's plenty of fun to be had here. The first unreviewed game at the time of making this video is Master Blaster Enemy Below. Subscribe to the channel to see more of what I thought of that and the Sunsoft Collection 2 in general in an upcoming video. Its unique style and being a solid Metroidvania game make it an obvious candidate for this list. I had a great time with it, and it's well deserving. At number 17 from the Pico Collection 1 comes Brave Battle Saga. Whilst it's by no means the greatest JRPG, it's a decent one and the best one that I've come across on the Evercade so far. And just being a JRPG holds a lot of value for me. They offer a ton of gameplay and they're perfect for handheld. Whilst I'd love to see something like Phantasy Star show up on the Evercade, for now this is the best Evercade owners I've got. And I had a great time with it, and you could definitely do a lot worse. One of the first games I played on the Evercade was Tanza from the Megacat Studios collection. It's a stylish and slick throwback to Mega Drive action games, with a slick soundtrack, tight controls, and old school difficulty. Even constantly having your ass handed to you by this game isn't so bad because it's just so incredibly cool. Representing the Toplan Arcade 1 collection, I had a lot of fun with Alcon, and it's one of the most memorable shooters on the Evercade. What it lacks in visuals, it makes up for in gameplay, with its unique weapon upgrade system that offers an extra level of strategy not normally found in a shooter. It's easy to overlook, but definitely worth checking out. The best game on the Indie Heroes Collection 2 was Tapeworm Disco Puzzle. While not usually my style of game, I had a lot of fun with this one. It's got some great music, as you'd expect from the title, and it wasn't like any other puzzle game I've played before. Its separate 2-player mode was great too, and puzzle games aren't generally for me. The fact that this one made it to my top 20 speaks volumes about how good it must be. A really cool shooter that style gave me Space Harrier vibes. While I'm not remotely a fan of Space Harrier, I am now a fan of Burning Force. It both looks and sounds great, and it's a lot of fun to play too. What it lacks in a creative, memorable name, it makes up in everything else and deserves its place on this list. The second best game on the Gaelico Arcade Collection 2 is Biomechanical Toy, and it comes in at number 11 on my list. This one was a really pleasant surprise that I'd never even heard of. Its colourful visuals and weird enemies stuck with me long after I'd put it down. Sure, there are tons of action platformers filled with weird enemies, but they're generally just not as good as this. It's a real gem of a game. Found on the Bitmap Brothers collection is Speedball 2. I had such fond memories of Speedball 2 as a kid. I think this was the first sports game I ever really got into the career side of things. And being able to just fire it up on the Evercade EXP or with a friend on the Versus, if any of them were remotely interested, which they aren't, is great. It holds up surprisingly well, bar the ridiculous confusing menu system, and single player mode is still really fun to this day, if you can't convince your stupid friends to play with you. The second best game on the Indie Heroes Collection 1, Quest to Rest, is one of the most unique games I've played on the Evercade. Well, that I've enjoyed anyway. I mean, this was pretty unique. Pokemon is the most obvious comparison from how the arrest system works, but it's not really much like Pokemon. Whilst only 1 to 2 hours long, it tells an interesting, memorable story, and it's just a game that I feel I'll always remember. Whilst the first Top Racer was okay, the second Top Racer, found on the Pico Collection 2, is the best racing game I've played on the Evercade, and one of the best 16-bit racing games I've played in general. It's fast, it's fun, and it's the main reason to own the cart that it's on. If you're a fan of 16-bit arcade racers, you should definitely check it out if you've never played it, and play it again if you have. The best game on the already mentioned Indie Heroes Collection 1 is Deadius. The creepy storyline juxtaposed against Pokemon-like Game Boy visuals feels extra disturbing. What it lacks in gameplay, by mainly just being about talking to people in the right place at the right time, it makes up for in story, presentation, and tension. Deadius will haunt my dreams forever, and they will be great dreams. Whilst it's not as good as its successor that's yet to make an appearance on the Evercade, Always Awakening is a good indie platformer that relies on a lot of precise jumping. With its NES visuals and sound and its fun gameplay, I felt that it was overshadowed by Cathedral on the dual cart and perhaps overlooked. Damn you, Cathedral. How many lives must you ruin? At number 6 on this list is a game I briefly played growing up, but got really into on the Evercade, from the Bitmap Brothers collection, and that is the Chaos Engine. Whilst a much better game co-op, the Chaos Engine still works really well in single player, which it had to because no one would play with my co-op. Idiots. This is a recurring theme for the top 5 games on this list. Whilst they're good in single player, they're even better in multiplayer. Well, apart from number 5. Maybe it's just a theme for the top 4 games. I think I must have had this game at number 5 when I wrote that. I'm going to leave it in. It's an excellent maze shooter game that's pretty difficult, but it's a lot of fun. I'll never understand why pinball machines disappeared into a niche. They were everywhere in the 80s and early 90s, and then when arcade machines started to disappear due to the rise in home console capabilities, pinball machines unfortunately disappeared too. But most people don't have a pinball machine at home, and pinball machines are awesome. If, like me, you don't have a pinball machine at home, the next best thing is probably an Oculus and Pinball FX2. But after that, the next best thing is Psycho Pinball on the CodeMasters collection. It's a fun, colourful pinball game, and certainly the best pinball game I played in the 90s. Having it on handheld is just awesome. At number 4, Alligator Hunter is a game that I hadn't even heard of, which is impressive. I don't know why that's impressive, but it is. From the Gaelco Arcade Collection 1, this shooter boasts an awesome soundtrack, cool visuals, and gameplay that feels like nothing else on the Evercade. Figuratively and literally, I had a blast with this one. Again, good with 2 people though. Found on the Worms collection rather than the Team 17 collection, either the original Worms or Worms Armageddon can fill this spot. Whilst Armageddon is the better of the two, I decided they were too similar to take up 2 places on this list. The Worms games have been on my multiplayer playlist for over 30 years, and whilst my go-to is now the excellent Worms WMD, Worms Armageddon took up that spot for a long time. But if you've not got the Evercade Versus or a friend, fear not, as the single player mode of Worms Armageddon are probably the best in the series, with a variety of modes and interesting challenges, as well as some challenging AI. Which I actually used to pronounce Al. It was Al, I always thought. And number 2 on the list from the Codemasters Collection 1 is Sensible Soccer. Like number 3 on the list, this was a game that I'd played a lot growing up, but I was blown away at how well it held up. 99% of football/soccer games from the 20th century just don't hold up at all. Most are in fact terrible. Sensible Soccer is the exception to that rule. It's still as fun now as it ever was. It's a fast, exciting arcade football game that's both great with 2 players or even just solo. It's got a wealth of modes to keep you entertained, but that wouldn't matter at all if the gameplay couldn't cut it, which it absolutely does. It's easy to play with its 2-button gameplay, but difficult to master, and no matter what your skill level, a beautifully curled shot into the top corner is always satisfying. If you don't like football games, stuff like this is so easy and mistakenly overlooked. I had zero interest in watching football or playing football as a kid, but I loved me some Sensible Soccer. Up until I started making this video, Sensible Soccer was my number 1 pick. But before I finished filming, something told me I needed to play a cart that had been sat on my desk for about a month. I don't even know what made me buy it. There were plenty of others in the backlog, and I'd not heard anything about any of the games on it. The review for this cart itself will be along in future videos, but this is my #1 game on the Evercade. Sometimes a great game will take a while to gel. It took me years, decades to get into Super Metroid. The first Hollow Knight game took me about 10 hours of gameplay before my pain turned into joy. Good Boy Galaxy, part of Dual Kart with Witch and Wiz, took me about 5 minutes to realise how good it was. From the opening cutscene through to the simple tutorial, it became instantly obvious that this was a game I was going to really like. A platformer with some tight controls is always a good start. Once it became apparent this wasn't just platformer, but a Metroidvania, I knew I'd stumbled across something special. There was just so much to like about this game that it seems weird that I'd never even heard of it before. If you want me to go more in depth about the analysis of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and to ring that bell for the upcoming video review of the whole cart. In the meantime, just know that this is the best game that I've played on the Evercade to date. So those are my top 20 games. Hopefully there's something in there that you've not played and this will inspire you to do so. Let me know what games make your lists. Don't just post a bunch of top 20s, but let me know any good ones. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. Hopefully, I'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for watching.